In this video, we explore the Great Unraveling. Trump dismantles America's climate commitments, a critical examination of policies that reshaped the country's environmental landscape during his presidency. From the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement to the rollback of crucial vehicle emissions standards, we uncover the significant actions taken that have drastically shifted the United States climate agenda. Join us as we delve into the consequences of expanded oil and gas drilling, the erosion of global leadership on climate issues, and the impact of weakened protections for air, water, and wildlife. This comprehensive analysis sheds light on the broader implications for both America and the planet. 1. Paris Agreement withdrawal. In a move that shocked environmentalists worldwide, former President Donald Trump announced the United States' withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. This decision, which became official in November 2020, marked a significant step back from global climate cooperation. The Paris Agreement, signed in 2015, was a landmark accord that aimed to limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. By withdrawing, Trump isolated the U.S. from efforts to combat climate change, leaving other countries to forge ahead without one of the world's largest carbon emitters. Critics argued that this withdrawal undermined the international community's ability to address climate change effectively. The decision was seen as a blow to global solidarity in the fight against a warming planet. 2. Clean Power Plan repeal. Under Trump's administration, the Clean Power Plan, an Obama-era policy designed to reduce carbon emissions from power plants, was repealed. This plan aimed to shift the United States towards renewable energy sources by setting limits on carbon emissions. In its place, Trump introduced the Affordable Clean Energy (ACE) rule, which critics claimed was far less effective in reducing emissions. The ACE rule provided more flexibility to states and delayed the transition to cleaner energy sources. Environmentalists warned that this change hindered progress in decarbonizing the energy sector, prolonging reliance on fossil fuels. The repeal and replacement were viewed as a setback for the nation's climate goals. 3. Expanded oil and gas drilling. Trump's administration took significant steps to expand oil and gas drilling on federal lands and waters. This included opening up millions of acres, such as the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, for exploration. The decision sparked outrage among environmentalists and indigenous groups who argued that it threatened sensitive ecosystems and wildlife habitats. The move stood in stark contrast to efforts aimed at reducing fossil fuel dependency. By prioritizing energy development over conservation, the administration faced criticism for disregarding the long-term environmental consequences. This expansion of drilling activities was seen as a direct opposition to global climate commitments aimed at reducing carbon emissions. 4. Methane emission rollbacks. The Trump administration rolled back regulations on methane emissions, a potent greenhouse gas that contributes significantly to global warming. Methane, which traps more heat than carbon dioxide over a short period, is a major byproduct of oil and gas operations. The rollback of these regulations was justified as a means to reduce compliance costs for the energy industry. However, environmental groups argued that it allowed for increased methane leaks, undermining efforts to mitigate climate change. The decision was criticized for prioritizing industry profits over environmental protection. The rollback was seen as a step backward in addressing one of the most immediate threats of climate change. 5. Vehicle emissions standards reversal. Trump's administration also took steps to reverse Obama-era fuel efficiency standards, which aimed to reduce emissions from the transportation sector. The rollback of these standards meant that automakers were no longer required to meet stringent efficiency targets. This decision slowed the transition to cleaner vehicles and increased the nation's overall carbon footprint. Environmentalists warned that the reversal jeopardized progress towards reducing emissions in one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases. The move was seen as a setback for efforts to combat climate change through technological advancements in the automotive industry. Critics argued that it favored the interests of the automotive industry over environmental protection. 6. Water protections strip. The Trump administration redefined the waters of the United States, WOTUS, rule, stripping federal protections for many wetlands and small streams. This redefinition reduced the number of waterways protected under the Clean Water Act, making them more vulnerable to pollution and development. Environmentalists argued that this change threatened critical ecosystems and the biodiversity they support. The decision faced legal challenges from conservation groups who viewed it as an erosion of environmental safeguards. By prioritizing economic development over water protection, the administration faced criticism for disregarding the ecological importance of these waterways. The redefinition was seen as a step backward in preserving the nation's natural resources. 7. Coal industry revitalization. Trump's support for the coal industry manifested in the reversal of policies limiting coal-fired power plant pollution. This included rolling back regulations on carbon emissions and toxic mercury, which are harmful to both the environment and public health. The administration's actions were framed as an effort to revive the declining coal industry and protect jobs. However, environmentalists warned that this approach ignored the long-term impacts of coal pollution on climate change and air quality. The revitalization efforts were criticized for prioritizing short-term economic gains over sustainable energy solutions. The decision was seen as a step backward in reducing the nation's reliance on fossil fuels. 8. Weakening renewable energy support. Federal funding for renewable energy research and programs saw significant reductions under Trump's administration. This hampered progress in developing wind, solar, and energy storage technologies, which are crucial for transitioning to a low-carbon economy. The cuts were justified as part of broader efforts to reduce government spending. However, critics argued that they undermined innovation and competitiveness in the clean energy sector. The reduction in support was viewed as a missed opportunity to lead in the global transition to renewable energy. Environmentalists warned that it delayed critical advancements needed to address climate change effectively. 9. Endangered Species Act rollbacks. The Trump administration weakened the Endangered Species Act, prioritizing industrial projects over wildlife conservation. This included changes that made it harder to consider climate change impacts when protecting habitats. Environmentalists argued that these rollbacks threatened biodiversity and the survival of vulnerable species. The decision faced legal challenges from conservation groups who viewed it as an erosion of critical protections. By prioritizing economic development over ecological preservation, the administration faced criticism for disregarding the long-term impacts on wildlife. The rollbacks were seen as a step backward in safeguarding the nation's natural heritage. 10. Global leadership erosion. Trump's climate actions significantly damaged the United States' credibility and leadership in global climate diplomacy. By withdrawing from international agreements and rolling back domestic policies, the administration faced criticism from allies and competitors alike. This erosion of trust made it harder for future administrations to negotiate and uphold climate commitments. Environmentalists warned that the loss of leadership hindered global efforts to address climate change effectively. The decision was seen as a setback for international cooperation in combating a warming planet. Critics argued that it delayed critical action needed to mitigate the impacts of climate change on a global scale.